In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your passenger side lower tie rod, outer tie rod that is, which is this part right here, connects your passenger side knuckle to the adjusting sleeve that goes to the driver's side. And just as a disclaimer, you will need an alignment after you're done replacing this component. Let's get started. Let's remove the wheel. If you have one of these lug nut covers, go ahead and pry it off with a pry bar. It has a little slot here that you can insert the pry bar in to start it. Try to be gentle so you don't scratch up the wheel. And now with a 21mm socket, remove all 8 of your lug nuts, and then we'll take the wheel off. To get started, I'm going to remove the cotter pin that locks this nut in at the bottom of the tie rods here. Unbend it. It's bent over, and hopefully it's not too rusted in place, and I can actually push it out. There we go. I think it's working. All right, take that out. Use your 19mm socket, remove this nut. And now we have to separate this lower tie rod and get it to come off of the stud. And in order to prevent it from falling and swinging all the way down, I'm actually going to put this nut back on just a couple threads, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is hammer on the side of it till it breaks free. Okay, didn't take much. That's good. Always pay attention for your boot when you do this. Okay, swing this down. Now I want to loosen up these 2 clamps here. There's a 13mm nut on this side of this clamp. Go ahead and remove that. Pull this out. You can move the clamp back. This will allow you to spin the tie rod. Now use a 15mm and unlock this clamp over here. You don't have to remove the bolt out of this one. You just make it loose. And technically at this point, the tie rod is unlocked, but it's pretty rusted in there. So what I'm going to do, go ahead and push this plastic sleeve backwards a little bit. And now I have been spraying this with rust penetrant for the past few days, just in this slot here, around here, everywhere, trying to soak it in so that the tie rod can break free. But as you can see, it's still pretty rusty. I'm going to remove this locking ring here, and hopefully what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to pull this sleeve off, and then once I have this off, I can spread the 2 halves apart in there and get the tie rod loosened up. I broke it free on both sides. Now I just have to grab it with pliers and kind of spin it out of here. Okay, there we go. Now you can pull this sleeve off of here. Now we'll take a chisel and a hammer, stick the chisel in there. That'll spread the 2 halves apart, and we should be able to freely remove the tie rod. I'll give it a couple taps with the hammer around just to hopefully break it free before I do that. Well, there you have it. Just the hammer alone broke it free. But putting this in here will make the removal a lot easier. So leave that in there and then count the amount of turns that it takes to remove this tie rod so that we can reinstall it the same amount of turns and be as close as possible to a decent alignment so that we don't wear out our tires on the way to the alignment shop. There it is. Take the sleeve off, put that back on here, and then this locking ring as well. We'll reinstall that in a little bit. I will actually take this off so I can clean in here a little bit better without this falling off. On the new tie rod, I put some anti-seize on the threads. Then I want to put the locking ring on and then the sleeve. Then we'll thread this on. Remember, it's reverse thread, so loosen it to tighten it and tighten it to loosen it. Okay, there we go. Thread started. Let's just go in the same amount of turns that it took to remove it. So that we can be as close as possible to a decent alignment. Okay, that's about where I want to stop for me. So I'll go ahead and put this on. Let's reinstall this little locking ring here. Push it around the whole sleeve. Make sure it's seated in its groove. Okay, at this point I'd like to leave this loose because the tie rod is not going to be perfectly positioned right now for the knuckle and the stud on the upper tie rod. So I want to be able to spin it just a little bit to line it up perfectly, and then once it's mounted on the knuckle, we'll tighten this up and lock it in. Now we'll bring in the lower tie rod and slide it up onto the upper one. We'll get the mounting nut on. There we go. This new one is a 21mm socket. Go ahead and tighten it up, and then we'll torque it down. 85 foot-pounds for this nut. And now we want to make sure that it lines up with the slot for the cotter pin. It does not, so I'm going to keep tightening. Never loosen to make it line up, always keep tightening a little bit. That's spot on right there. Slide the cotter pin through, and then bend it over to lock it in. And back to this sleeve over here, 41 foot-pounds. All right, let's reinstall the wheel now. Put on all 8 of your lug nuts, snug them up, and then torque them to 165 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. And don't forget this cover if you have one.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.